Three men entered Mackenzie Brenner's property at 3 in the morning on a Tuesday in October. By sunrise, the mountain had claimed them. But to understand how a 27-year-old woman defeated a team of professional killers, we need to go back 72 hours, to the moment her life changed forever. Actually, we need to go back further than that. We need to go back 8 months to a military tribunal room in Kandahar, Afghanistan, where Mac's world fell apart. The hearing room was sterile white walls and fluorescent lights. No windows. Just Mac, 3 judges, and Major General Marcus Aldridge standing behind the prosecution table like a vulture waiting for something to die. "Lieutenant Brenner," Aldridge said, his voice smooth as oil on water, "you refused a direct kill order. Can you explain to this tribunal why you disobeyed a lawful command in a combat zone?" Mac stood at attention. 26 years old, 5'4", 120 pounds soaking wet. The smallest person in the room. The only woman. She'd graduated top of her SEAL sniper class. 73 confirmed kills. More than most men achieved in entire careers. None of it mattered now. The target was a civilian, sir. A 14-year-old boy carrying a school bag, not an IED. Intelligence confirmed he was a suicide bomber. Intelligence was wrong, sir. Aldridge's jaw tightened. He was 58, silver-haired, 3 stars on his shoulder. A man who'd built his career on never being questioned. Your hesitation cost us valuable time. The target escaped. 3 American soldiers died in the subsequent attack. That was a lie. The boy had walked into a school. No explosion. No attack. Mac had surveillance footage that proved it, but somehow that footage never made it to the tribunal. Sir, I respectfully, female operators lack the mental fortitude for split-second combat decisions. Aldridge turned to the judges. Lieutenant Brenner's emotional response endangered American lives. I recommend immediate discharge and revocation of her SEAL trident. The judges deliberated for 7 minutes. 7 minutes to destroy 6 years of service. When they returned, Mac already knew. She could see it in their eyes. The way men look at women they've decided aren't good enough, aren't strong enough, aren't hard enough. Lieutenant Brenner, you are hereby discharged from the United States Navy, effective immediately. Your separation is categorized as general under less than honorable conditions. Mac's hand trembled as they took her trident. The small metal pin she'd bled for. The symbol she'd earned on the coldest, hardest day of her life during Hell Week. Gone. Aldridge met her eyes as she left the tribunal room. For just a moment, his expression shifted. Something dark moved behind those cold, blue eyes. Not victory, something else. Fear. Mac would understand why 8 months later, when she found her grandfather's journal. October 2023. The San Juan Mountains of southwestern Colorado rose like granite teeth against an autumn sky. Mac drove her Ford F-150 up a dirt road that hadn't seen maintenance in 20 years. The truck bounced over rocks and ruts. Pine trees pressed close on both sides, their shadows long in the afternoon light. She'd spent $850,000 on this land. Every penny she'd saved during 6 years of service, plus the separation payout the Navy gave her to keep quiet about what really happened in Afghanistan. 2,000 acres, no neighbors within 10 miles, no cell service, no internet, just mountains and forest, and a cabin that hadn't been occupied since 2003. The cabin where her grandfather died. The truck rounded a bend and there it was, a log structure that time had been slowly reclaiming. The roof sagged in the middle. Windows were cracked or missing. The porch looked ready to collapse if you breathed on it wrong. Mac cut the engine and sat in the sudden silence. She'd been 7 years old the last time she saw this place. Her grandfather, Colonel James Brenner, had brought her here for 2 weeks one summer. Taught her to shoot his old Remington 700, showed her how to read the wind, calculate bullet drop, control her breathing. You've got the eye, Mac, he'd told her, watching her punch holes in a target at 200 yards. Natural talent, But talent without discipline is just wasted potential. 2 weeks later, he was dead. Car accident on the winding mountain road. That's what the police said. That's what Mac believed for 20 years. Now she knew better. She climbed out of the truck. The air was thin and cold at 9,000 feet. Aspens scattered among the pines glowed gold in the slanting light. Somewhere a raven called, harsh and lonely. Mac walked to the cabin door. The lock was rusted solid. She put her shoulder into it. Wood cracked. The door swung open on squealing hinges. The interior was dim and musty. Dust lay thick on every surface. A pot-belly stove in the corner, a table and 2 chairs, a single bed frame with no mattress. Everything her grandfather left behind when he disappeared in 1984, then briefly returned to in 2003 before his death. Mac moved through the space slowly. She'd learned patience in the seals, how to observe, how to notice what didn't fit. The floor creaked under her boots. In the far corner, one board sounded different, hollow. She knelt and pried up the plank with her K-bar knife. Beneath it, a metal box, military-grade, waterproof, combination lock. Her heart rate didn't change. She'd been in enough dangerous situations to control her physiological responses. But her hands moved faster as she spun the dial. 3179, her birthday. The lock clicked open. Inside, a leather journal, cracked and worn. A folded map with hand-drawn markings. 3 photographs in a plastic sleeve. And a letter addressed to her in her grandfather's handwriting. Mac opened the journal first. The entries were dated 1982 to 1984. Written in a simple substitution cipher she recognized immediately because her grandfather had taught it to her when she was 6. Their private game. She spent the next 5 hours translating by the light of her truck's headlights. By the time she finished, the sun had set and the temperature had dropped below freezing. But Mac barely noticed the cold. Her world had just turned upside down. Her grandfather hadn't been just a CIA officer. He'd been part of something called Operation Ghost Winter. 1983, a Soviet KGB defector crossing the Mexican border with 3 SADM units, special atomic demolition munitions, portable nuclear weapons, each one capable of vaporizing 2 city blocks. The CIA team sent to recover them was led by a young lieutenant named Marcus Aldridge. Mac's blood went cold when she read that name. The same Aldridge who just destroyed her career, who'd been 24 in 1984, who'd proposed selling 2 of the 3 weapons on the black market, who'd killed 5 team members when Mac's grandfather refused to go along with the plan. The journal detailed everything, how Aldridge had been communicating with Soviet intelligence the entire time, planning to sell the weapons to the highest bidder and blame the theft on James Brenner. When her grandfather discovered the truth, he'd made a split-second decision, stole all 3 weapons, killed 2 Soviet operatives in the process, escaped into the Colorado wilderness while Aldridge murdered the rest of the CIA team to cover his tracks. For 19 years, James Brenner lived under assumed names, moved from town to town, never staying long enough to put down roots, always looking over his shoulder, until 2003, when Aldridge finally found him. The journal's final entry was dated May 2003, 2 weeks before his death. The handwriting was rushed, desperate, written by a man who knew he was going to die. Aldridge found me. He's a general now, has resources I can't fight. He threatened Mackenzie. She's only 7. I can't let him hurt her. I agreed to show him the locations, but I'm going to show him fakes. The real components are hidden where only Mac will find them when she's ready. If you're reading this, Mac, I'm probably dead. Finish what I started. The clues are in the map. 3 sisters watch the ghost at dawn. The silver tears flow to the sleeping giant. The components are hidden at 3 Sisters Peak Summit, the abandoned silver mine at Red Canyon, and the bottom of Lake Colossus. Each SADM is disassembled. Plutonium cores, detonators, arming mechanisms. Separated, they're harmless. Together, they could level a small city. Trust no one in the system. Aldridge has friends everywhere. Finish this. And Mac, I'm sorry I wasn't there to watch you grow up. But you're a Brenner. We finish what we start. Mac set down the journal. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was controlled. Inside, something cold and hard crystallized into certainty. Aldridge hadn't just destroyed her career out of misogyny. He'd done it because she was James Brenner's granddaughter. Because he couldn't risk her being in a position of authority or trust. Couldn't risk her learning the truth. 20 years ago, he'd murdered her grandfather and made it look like an accident. Now he was coming back to finish what he started. Max spent the next 3 days preparing. She cleared the cabin, installed a wood stove, made it livable, set up a solar panel array for power, brought in supplies, food, water, ammunition. She drove to the nearest town, 40 miles away, exactly once. Bought what she needed from 3 different stores so no one would remember her buying everything together. Then she started setting up her perimeter, 22 motion-activated cameras, carefully hidden. She positioned them along the 3 main access routes to her property. Wireless, encrypted, feeding to a laptop in her cabin. Any movement larger than a deer would trigger an alert. She walked every acre of her land, learned the terrain the way she'd learned urban combat zones in Iraq, where the sight lines were, where cover existed, where someone could hide, where someone could die without anyone ever finding the body. On the 3rd night, she was standing on a granite outcropping she'd started calling Ghost Rock when her laptop pinged. Motion detected, North Perimeter, Camera 7. Mac pulled up the feed on her phone. 4 shapes moving through the forest. 2 in the morning. They moved in a tactical formation, bounding overwatch. One team providing cover while the other advanced. Not hikers, not random hunters. The feed was black and white, infrared, but she could make out details. Rifles, not civilian hunting weapons. Military pattern semi-automatics. Night vision goggles. Tactical packs. But here was the thing that made Mac's pulse quicken. They were dressed like hunters. Camouflage jackets. Orange vests. The kind of costume people wore when they wanted to look like they belonged in the woods. They were heading directly toward a spot on the North Ridge. Mac pulled up her grandfather's map. The location matched one of his marks. X1. She felt no fear. Fear was for people who weren't prepared. Mac had been preparing for this her entire life. She just hadn't known it. She grabbed her gear. Sig Sauer P226 on her hip. Remington 700 in her hands. The same rifle her grandfather had taught her to shoot 20 years ago. She'd rebuilt it completely. New barrel, new stock, new scope. Leupold Mark IV, military-grade glass. The night was moonless, perfect for what she needed to do. Mac moved through the forest like smoke, silent, invisible. She'd learned stalking from the best snipers in the Naval Special Warfare community. Had spent weeks in urban hide sites in Ramadi, barely breathing, waiting for targets that sometimes never came. This was easier. This was her mountain. She reached an elevated position 300 yards from where the men had stopped. Set up prone behind a fallen log. Pulled out her night vision monocular. 4 men. Civilian hunting clothes, but wrong. Too clean. Too new. The kind of costume people wore when they didn't actually hunt. One of them was using a military-grade metal detector. Another had a GPS unit. A third was smoking a cigarette, the ember bright in her night vision. These weren't hunters, but they were pretending to be. "You sure this is the right grid?" one of them said. His voice carried in the still air. Command confirmed it. The old man buried something here in '84. Mac's finger moved to her rifle's safety, clicked it off. The sound was impossibly loud in her own ears, though she knew they couldn't hear it from 300 yards away. She could drop all 4 before they knew where the shots came from. Darkness, suppressor, subsonic ammunition. They'd never even see the muzzle flash. But she needed to know more. Who sent them? How much they knew? whether more were coming. She switched to her phone, started recording audio. The men spent 20 minutes searching with the metal detector, found nothing. Their frustration was evident in their body language. Sharp movements, aggressive gestures. "This is bullshit," one of them said. "We've been searching for 3 nights. Maybe the intel's wrong." The intel came from Aldridge himself. "You want to tell a 2-star general he's wrong?" Mac's breath caught. There it was. Confirmation. "We've got 2 more sites to check. If nothing's there, we call it in and let the general decide next steps. Now let's move before—" He stopped, raised a fist. The team immediately went silent, dropped into defensive positions. They'd heard something. Mac hadn't moved, hadn't made a sound, but something had spooked them. An animal, maybe, or just paranoia. Good operators developed a 6th sense for when they were being watched. "Someone's here," the leader whispered. They started scanning with their night vision. Max slowly, carefully, pulled back from the log. Belly crawled backward 15 feet, found a depression in the ground, and rolled into it. 30 seconds later, 2 of them passed within 10 feet of her position. "Probably an elk," one muttered. "This place gives me the creeps." "Yeah, let's finish up and get back to the vehicles. I don't like being out here in the dark." They moved on. Max stayed in the depression for another 20 minutes, not moving, barely breathing, waiting until her laptop showed them leaving the property on the north camera. Only then did she rise and make her way back to the cabin. Inside, she reviewed the audio recording, enhanced it, isolated their voices, ran them through facial recognition software she wasn't supposed to have access to anymore. 3 hits, all military contractors, formerly Delta Force, now working for a private security company, Aldridge Security Group. Max sat back in her chair. Her cabin was cold despite the stove. Outside, the wind had picked up. It moaned through the pines like something dying. She pulled up the company website, professional photos, smiling people in suits, corporate language about security solutions and risk management. The CEO's photo showed a man in his 60s, distinguished, silver-haired, 3 stars on his dress uniform in the official portrait behind him. Major General Marcus Aldridge, U.S. Army, retired. The man who'd destroyed her career. The man who'd killed her grandfather. Now sending his people to tear apart her mountain, looking for nuclear weapons that could destabilize the entire world if they fell into the wrong hands. Mac closed the laptop, walked to the window, stared out at the darkness. They'd be back, with more men, better equipment, and eventually they'd realize she was the granddaughter of the man who'd hidden what they were looking for. They'd realize she might know something, and then they'd come for her. Max smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. It was the smile of a predator who just realized prey had walked into her territory. Let them come. She spent the rest of the night preparing. 4 concealed fighting positions. Spider holes, snipers called them. Good sight lines, multiple escape routes. She cached supplies at each one. Ammunition, water, medical supplies, smoke grenades. Her laptop pinged again as dawn broke. Multiple alerts, all 3 perimeters, 8 different cameras. Mac's pulse didn't change, but something cold settled into her chest. She pulled up the feeds. 8 men this time, 2 teams of 4, professional formations, better equipment, not pretending to be hunters anymore, full tactical gear, AR-15 rifles with suppressors, night vision mounts even though it was daytime, drones in the air. They weren't searching anymore, they were staging an assault. Mac watched them coordinate on her screens. They had radios, encrypted probably, hand signals, fire team movements. These weren't contractors playing soldier. These were legitimate operators who knew exactly what they were doing. She zoomed in on one feed. Facial recognition hit immediately. Garrett Webb, 48 years old, 22 years Delta Force, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, dishonorable discharge in 2019 for unspecified reasons. now employed by Aldridge Security Group as Director of Operations. The other men were similar, all former Tier 1 operators, all with questionable discharges, all willing to work outside the law for the right price. Mac's phone buzzed, a number she didn't recognize. She answered it on speaker, setting it on the table while she started loading magazines. "Ms. Brenner," the voice was smooth, cultured, familiar from 8 months ago. "My name is Marcus Aldridge. I believe we have some unfinished business to discuss." Mac said nothing, kept loading ammunition, 30 rounds per magazine. She had 12 magazines for the M4 she'd kept from her SEAL days. Technically illegal for her to possess after discharge, but she'd stopped caring about technicalities. "You're on land that belonged to your grandfather. Land with something very valuable buried on it. I'm prepared to offer you $5 million to walk away. Today, right now. My people will help you pack. You'll never hear from me again." Mac chambered around in her Sig Sauer. The metallic click was audible over the phone. Aldridge's tone changed, hardened. "I see. Then let me be direct. You have 2 hours to leave this property voluntarily. After that, my team has authorization to remove you by force. You're a discharged service member with PTSD, living alone on a remote mountain. If something tragic were to happen, well, these mountains are dangerous. People get hurt. People disappear. And no one asks questions about a disturbed veteran who couldn't handle civilian life." "You killed my grandfather," Max said quietly. Silence on the line. Just for a moment, then Aldridge laughed. It was a genuine laugh, full of real amusement. "James Brenner died in a car accident 20 years ago. But if it makes you feel better to believe conspiracy theories, be my guest. 2 hours, Ms. Brenner. I strongly suggest you use them wisely." The line went dead. Max set down the phone and continued her preparations. Her phone buzzed again. Not Aldridge this time. A number she recognized. Dr. Sienna Hastings, another former SEAL, combat medic who'd pulled Mac out of a collapsed building in Mosul. The closest thing Mac had to a best friend. "Don't tell me you're already in trouble at your new place," Sienna said when Mac answered. "How fast can you get to southwestern Colorado?" Sienna's tone changed immediately. "What's happening? Remember that general I told you about? The one who burned me? Yeah. He's sending a team to my location. At least 8 operators. Former Delta. They're coming in hard. Jesus, Mac. Call the local police. FBI. Someone." "Can't. This goes deeper than you know. I need backup I can trust. How fast?" A pause. Mac could almost hear Sienna doing calculations. "I'm in Albuquerque. 5 hours if I drive fast." "But Mac, 5 hours is a long time when you've got 8 trained killers incoming." "I know. I can handle it until you get here. Bring anyone you trust, anyone with trigger time." "I can call Reeves and Jackson Cole. They're both in New Mexico. We can caravan up together." "Do it. I'll text you coordinates. Come in from the south approach. I'll know it's you." "Mac, don't do anything stupid." "Too late. I bought a mountain. Pretty sure that qualifies." She hung up before Sienna could argue. 5 hours. Mac could last 5 hours. She'd lasted longer in worse circumstances. She just had to survive until backup arrived. And make sure Aldridge's people learned a very important lesson about crossing fences they shouldn't cross. Mac gathered her gear and headed out into the afternoon sun. Her grandfather's Remington 700, her M4 carbine, her Sig Sauer, every round of ammunition she owned, her night vision monocular, her rangefinder, her wind meter. And one other thing, something she'd brought from her SEAL days that she'd hoped never to use again. A thermite grenade, for destroying equipment when capture was imminent, or in this case, for making sure certain things were never found. Because Mac had made a decision while listening to Aldridge's smug voice. She wasn't leaving this mountain. Not today, not ever. This was her land, her grandfather's land, the place where he'd made his last stand 40 years ago. If Aldridge wanted it, he'd have to take it from her. And taking things from a SEAL sniper who knew every inch of the terrain was a good way to end up in a grave the mountain would never give up. The sun was setting behind Three Sisters Peak when Mac reached her first spider hole. She'd built it 3 days ago in a natural depression behind a fallen ponderosa pine, 240 yards from the cabin, with a perfect sight line to the north approach. The position was invisible from ground level. Even from the air, it looked like just another shadow in the forest. Mac settled in, checked her rifle. The Remington 700 felt right in her hands. Familiar weight, familiar balance. She'd fired this weapon 10,000 times, knew exactly how it behaved in every condition. Wind, temperature, humidity, altitude, all the variables that turn shooting into mathematics and mathematics into death. The scope's reticle was illuminated red, low light setting. She ranged various landmarks. That boulder, 183 yards. That tree, 212 yards. That clearing where anyone approaching would have to expose themselves, 267 yards. Her breathing slowed. Heart rate dropped from 70 beats per minute to 58. Muscle memory from 1,000 training sessions. The body preparing itself for violence with the same calm efficiency it used for sleep. The laptop beside her showed 8 heat signatures moving through the forest. They'd split into 2 teams. Alpha team advancing from the north, Bravo team circling to approach from the south. Classic pincer movement. They'd converge on the cabin simultaneously, overwhelming any defense with superior firepower and numbers. It was a good plan. It would have worked against most people. Mac wasn't most people. She watched Alpha Team's lead element reach the trip line she'd set up that morning. Mac was already working the bolt, chambering another round, before the first man fell. He went down hard, not dead. The round had hit his shoulder, exactly where she'd aimed. She could have killed him, chose not to. Dead men stop fighting, wounded men scream, make their teammates panic, divide their attention. The radio operator hit the ground, started writhing. His screams carried through the forest. Max shifted to her second target, the rear guard breaking left toward cover. 218 yards, moving target, lead him by 8 inches. Breathe, squeeze. The rifle spoke again. This round took the man in the upper thigh, femoral artery area. Not a killing shot if they got pressure on it fast, but enough to take him out of the fight, enough to make another man stop shooting and start doing battlefield medicine. 2 down, 6 to go. Mac didn't wait to see the results. She was already moving. That was the first rule of snipercraft. Shoot and move. Never fire more than 2 rounds from the same position. The enemy would already be triangulating her location from muzzle flash and sound. She belly crawled backward 15 feet, rolled into a shallow ravine, ran at a crouch through the gathering darkness. Her second position was 400 yards west, elevated, different angle, different sight line. Behind her she heard shouting. Bravo team had heard the shots. They were changing their approach, moving faster, more aggressive. Good. Aggressive people made mistakes. Mac reached position 2. Another depression behind a cluster of granite boulders. She'd cleared the sight lines days ago, cut away branches, removed obstacles, created a perfect shooting lane that looked completely natural. Her laptop showed both teams now. Alpha had stopped to treat casualties. Bravo was rushing toward the cabin, thinking Mac was pinned down or focused on the other team. They were half right. Mac had set up more surprises along Bravo's approach route. The lead Bravo element triggered her second trap. Not a flashbang this time, a smoke grenade. Thick white chemical smoke that bloomed like a malevolent ghost in the forest. Within seconds, visibility dropped to 0. Bravo team did exactly what their training dictated. They went prone, established a defensive perimeter, waited for the smoke to clear. Mac used her thermal scope to pick out 4 distinct heat signatures. They were good. Spacing was correct. Overlapping fields of fire. Textbook small unit tactics. But thermal smoke couldn't hide body heat. She selected her target. the northernmost man. He'd positioned himself behind a tree, good cover from the cabin, no cover from Mac's elevated angle. 185 yards. Downhill shot. Gravity would pull the bullet low. Compensate by aiming 2 inches high. Wind was calm in the valley. No correction needed. The Remington's trigger broke clean. Then she was moving again. Position 3, 500 yards south. She had to hustle. Full combat load, 60 pounds of gear, running through forest in failing light. Her lungs burned at 9,000 feet elevation. Legs screamed. She ignored it. Pain was just information. Information she didn't need right now. Position 3 gave her eyes on both teams. Alpha was still dealing with casualties. Bravo had emerged from the smoke and was advancing again, but cautious now. Slow, checking every shadow, every possible hide site. They'd learned she wasn't some scared civilian with a deer rifle. They'd learned she was dangerous. Mac's phone buzzed. She ignored it, kept her eye on the scope, watching, waiting. The phone buzzed again, then again. Someone really wanted to talk to her. She risked a glance. Aldridge. Mac answered on speaker, didn't say anything, just waited. Impressive, Miss Brenner. Aldridge's voice was calm, almost admiring. Honesty is a luxury for people who can afford it. Your grandfather couldn't, and neither can you. I have 12 more operators 30 minutes out. Helicopter support. Thermal imaging that will see through any hide you prepared. You can wound a few more of my people, maybe even kill 1 or 2. But the math is simple. You lose. Maybe. But how many of your people die before I do? As many as necessary. I've spent 40 years building this. I'm not going to let James Brenner's granddaughter ruin it because she has romantic notions about honor. Last chance. Take the money, disappear, live. Mac ended the call. She knew what was coming now. Aldridge wasn't bluffing about reinforcements. He had resources, money, connections. He could afford to throw bodies at this problem until it went away. Mac couldn't win a war of attrition, but she didn't need to win. She just needed to survive until Sienna arrived. 3 more hours. Maybe less if Sienna drove like the maniac she usually did. 3 hours. Mac had lasted longer. She settled back into her scope and waited for the next move. It came faster than expected. A sound she recognized instantly. Rotor blades. Helicopter. Coming in from the east. Her laptop showed it on the motion sensors. Small civilian helicopter. Robinson R-44 probably. Aldridge himself coming to oversee the operation personally. The helicopter didn't land near the cabin. Too exposed. Instead, it set down in a clearing half a mile south. Mac watched through her scope as 5 people disembarked. 3 were security. The 4th was taller, moved like someone used to command. Even at this distance, she recognized him. The way he stood, the way he gestured. Marcus Aldridge in the flesh. And he'd brought someone else. A 5th person being pulled from the helicopter. Hands zip-tied, stumbling, being dragged forward by one of the security team. Mac zoomed her scope to maximum magnification. The image wavered. Too much distance, too little light. But she could make out details. White hair, thin frame, a woman, older, maybe 60 or 65. The security team set up a portable loudspeaker, pointed it toward Mac's property. Aldridge lifted a microphone. His voice boomed through the forest, artificial and enormous. Mackenzie Brenner, I know you can hear this. I have someone you should meet. Her name is Dr. Evelyn Thorne. She was your grandfather's partner 40 years ago. She's been looking for these weapons for longer than you've been alive. If you don't show yourself in 2 hours, I'll execute her. Mac's blood went cold. Her grandfather had a partner, someone who knew about Operation Ghost Winter, someone who'd been searching all this time. And Aldridge had her. Through the scope, Mac could see the woman more clearly now. Evelyn Thorne was kneeling on the ground. One of the security team had a pistol pressed to her head. Her face was bruised, dried blood on her temple. She'd been beaten. 2 hours, Miss Brenner. Show yourself unarmed. We'll talk like civilized people, or I'll show you exactly what happens to people who interfere with my operations. Mac lowered the rifle. Her mind raced through scenarios, options, tactics. She could take the shot, 500 yards, moving target, low light, but possible. She'd made harder shots. Put a round through Aldridge's head. End this. Except his security team would execute Evelyn immediately. And Max still had 6 healthy operators hunting her. Maybe more on the way. She could surrender, trade herself for Evelyn. Except Aldridge would kill them both. He'd said as much on the phone. No witnesses. Or she could do what SEALs did best. Improvise. Adapt. Overcome. The cabin had served its purpose as a defensive position, but now it was a liability. Aldridge expected her to defend it. Expected her to fight a conventional battle. Time to make this unconventional. Max started moving, not toward the cabin, away from it, toward where they were holding Evelyn. She had 2 hours, enough time if she moved fast. She covered the half-mile in 18 minutes, combat pace, weapon ready, using every bit of cover. The forest was full dark now, no moon, perfect conditions for what she needed to do. Mac found an elevated position 200 yards from Aldridge's command post. They'd set up portable lights, battery-powered floods that turned the clearing into a circle of harsh white illumination. Evelyn was still kneeling in the center, hands tied, guards standing over her. Aldridge was in a folding chair, looking at a laptop, probably monitoring his teams. 3 more security personnel stood perimeter watch. Mac counted heads, 4 total plus Evelyn. The helicopter pilot was still in the aircraft, engine running, ready for quick extraction. She pulled out her phone, checked the time. Still 90 minutes until Aldridge's deadline. Still 2.5 hours until Sienna arrived. Mac needed to change the timeline. She low-crawled to within 150 yards, close enough to hear them talking. Aldridge was on a radio. "Webb, status report. We've secured the cabin perimeter, no sign of her, but we found her vehicle. She's on foot." "Then find her. Use the thermals. She can't hide body heat." "Sir, she's got this terrain memorized. She's picking us apart. Jenkins and Howe are wounded. Morrison's down with a leg hit. We need better intel on her position before we advance. You have 12 men against 1 discharged female officer with PTSD. Figure it out." Webb's voice tightened. "Sir, with respect, this isn't some scared civilian. Brenner's SEAL trained. She knows what she's doing." "Then stop giving her time to do it. I want her found in the next hour. Alive if possible, dead if necessary. Clear?" "Clear, sir." The radio went silent. Aldridge stood, walked over to Evelyn, grabbed her hair, yanked her head back. "Where would she hide the components?" Evelyn's voice was weak but steady. "I don't know. James never told me the exact locations." "Liar!" Aldridge backhanded her. The crack echoed across the clearing. Mac's finger moved to her trigger. Every instinct screamed to take the shot. Drop Aldridge. Consequences be damned. But that wouldn't save Evelyn. Wouldn't end this. She forced herself to think, to plan. 4 guards, 1 helicopter pilot, Evelyn in the middle. Lights making it hard to approach unseen. But lights also destroyed night vision. Anyone looking at those floods wouldn't be able to see into the darkness beyond. Mac started moving again, circling, looking for the approach angle, the gap in their perimeter. She found it on the east side. A security guard who'd positioned himself wrong, too close to the lights, too focused on the forest in front of him, not watching his flanks. Mac took off her boots, moved in socks, silent as death itself across the pine needles. She covered 30 yards, then 40, got within 15 feet of the guard's position. He was young, maybe 25, former military based on his stance, probably army, infantry, good enough for conventional warfare, not good enough for this. Mac drew her K-bar knife, 7 inches of carbon steel. She'd killed men with this knife in Fallujah. Up close, quiet, the kind of killing that haunted your dreams. She moved like smoke, right up behind him, one hand over his mouth, the other putting the knife to his throat. Not cutting, just pressure, just the promise of death. "Make a sound and you die," she whispered. "Nod if you understand." He nodded. She could feel his pulse hammering against her palm. "Good. Now drop your rifle. Slow." He complied. The weapon hit the ground with a soft thump. Now the pistol, belt knife, everything. He stripped his weapons. Mac zip-tied his hands with a flex cuff from her kit, gagged him with his own bandana, dragged him into the shadows, left him alive. She'd killed enough men to know when killing was necessary. This wasn't. Now she had a hole in their perimeter. Mac moved into it, circled wide around the lights, got within 50 feet of the command post. She could see Evelyn clearly now. The woman's face was a mask of pain, but her eyes were alert, intelligent, not defeated. Aldridge was back on his laptop. 2 guards flanked him. The 4th guard was walking the perimeter. He'd find his missing teammate in about 3 minutes. Mac didn't have 3 minutes. She pulled out a smoke grenade, her last one. Debated, this was either going to work or get her killed. She pulled the pin, tossed it into the clearing, right into the middle of the light pool. The grenade bounced once, twice, started spewing thick gray smoke. Everything happened fast. The guards reacted, pointing, shouting, looking for targets. Their training made them seek cover, move away from the smoke. Mac broke cover and ran, straight into the smoke, straight toward Evelyn. The world became gray chaos, smoke so thick she couldn't see 2 feet. But she'd memorized Evelyn's position, counted her steps. 5, 6, 7. Her hands found fabric, found the woman. Evelyn gasped. "I'm Mac. I'm getting you out. Can you run?" "Yes." Mac cut the zip ties with her knife, grabbed Evelyn's hand, started pulling her back the way she'd come. Gunfire erupted, muzzle flashes in the smoke, wild shooting. They couldn't see targets, so they were saturating the area. Bullets snapped past Mac's head, thunked into trees. She zigzagged, pulled Evelyn down into a depression. The older woman fell. Mac hauled her up, kept moving. They broke out of the smoke, into darkness. Mac didn't stop, kept running. Evelyn stumbled. Mac caught her, half carried her. Adrenaline making the older woman's weight feel like nothing. Behind them, shouting, orders, lights sweeping the forest. Mac ran for 200 yards, then dove into a ravine, pulled Evelyn down beside her. They lay in the darkness, panting. "Who are you?" Evelyn gasped. "James Brenner's granddaughter." Even in the darkness, Mac could feel Evelyn's shock. "Mackenzie, you're alive, you're here. And you're his partner from 1984. "Yes, I've been trying to find these weapons for 40 years, to finish what James started, to prove Aldridge is a traitor. But he found me first, captured me yesterday. I'm sorry, I tried to warn you, tried to get here before. Later, right now we need to move. Can you walk?" "I'm 64 years old and I've been beaten for 12 hours. But I'm a thorn. We don't quit." Mac helped her up. They started moving through the forest, heading south, away from the cabin, away from Aldridge's teams. Mac's phone buzzed. She checked it while they walked. "Sienna, ETA 90 minutes, bringing Reeves and Cole. 3 total. What's your situation?" Mac typed back one-handed while guiding Evelyn over rough ground. "Extracted a hostage. Aldridge has 10+ operators on site. More incoming. We're mobile. We'll link up at South Rally Point." "Copy. Stay alive." Mac pocketed the phone. They walked for 20 minutes. Evelyn was tough, kept pace despite her injuries, but Mac could hear her breathing getting labored. "Rest," Mac said. They stopped in a cluster of boulders. Mac gave Evelyn water from her canteen, checked her injuries in the dim light of her phone. bruises, cuts, nothing life-threatening, but the older woman needed medical attention, probably a concussion from the head wound. "Tell me about Operation Ghost Winter," Max said. "Everything." Evelyn took a long drink, wiped her mouth. 1983, I was a junior CIA analyst, fresh out of Georgetown. James Brenner was a field officer. We got assigned to recover 3 SADM units from a Soviet defector crossing the Mexican border. Marcus Aldridge was our team leader, 24 years old, West Point graduate, senator's son, golden boy with a bright future. What happened? Aldridge had been communicating with Soviet intelligence, planning to sell 2 of the 3 weapons, keep one for the official report, make millions. James found out, confronted him. Aldridge killed 4 team members, framed James, tried to kill me but I escaped. Spent 15 years in federal prison on fabricated treason charges. Jesus. When I got out in 1998, I dedicated my life to proving the truth, collecting evidence, building a case. But Aldridge had climbed the ranks, had powerful friends. Every time I got close, he'd shut me down. Then 5 years ago, I found out James was dead, that he'd been living under an assumed name in Montana, that Aldridge had found him and killed him in 2003. Mac's jaw tightened. He tortured him. My grandfather's journal said Aldridge tortured him for 4 days, trying to get the weapons' locations. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. James was the best man I ever knew. He gave up everything to do the right thing, and it cost him his life. Tell me about the weapons, the components. Each SADM is a portable nuclear device, 0.5 kiloton yield, designed for demolition missions, bridges, dams, command bunkers. James disassembled all 3, separated the plutonium cores, detonators, and arming mechanisms. Without all 3 components, they're useless. But together they're functional nukes. Yes, and Aldridge has been trying to find them for 40 years. He's got a buyer lined up, probably North Korea or Iran. 75 million for all 3, maybe more. Mac's phone lit up with alerts. The laptop in her pack was pinging. Multiple heat signatures converging on their position. They'd been found. "We need to move," Mac said. "Now." They ran again. Mac could hear them behind, crashing through brush, no longer trying to be quiet. They had numbers. They had night vision. They could afford to be loud. Mac and Evelyn couldn't. Mac pulled Evelyn into a stream. They sloshed through ankle-deep water, moving downstream. The cold water would mask their heat signature from thermo-imaging. Buy them maybe 10 minutes. "The SADM components," Max said as they moved. "My grandfather's journal said 3 Sisters Peak, the Silver Mine, and Lake Colossus. 3 sisters for the plutonium core, the mine for the detonator assembly, the lake for the arming mechanism. He told me that much before he went into hiding. Said if anything happened to him, I should find you when you were old enough. Tell you the truth, but I couldn't find you. You were in the Navy, moving constantly. By the time I located you, Aldridge had already destroyed your career. He did that because I'm James Brenner's granddaughter? Yes. He couldn't risk you having authority, clearances, access. Couldn't risk you learning the truth and exposing him." They came to a small waterfall. Mac helped Evelyn climb down. The rocks were slick, dangerous, but it would break their trail. At the bottom, Mac checked her phone. 70 minutes until Sienna arrived. They just had to survive 70 more minutes. The forest opened into a meadow, 100 yards of open ground, exposed. But Mac could see Lake Colossus on the far side, the smallest of her 3 destinations. "One of the components is in that lake?" Mac asked. "If your grandfather's clues are right, yes. 18 feet deep, underwater cache chained to an anchor." Mac made a decision. "We're going to get it, right now." "Are you insane? They're right behind us." "Which means they'll expect us to keep running, not to stop. And we need leverage. As long as Aldridge doesn't have all 3 components, He can't sell them. Can't complete his deal. That gives us power. Evelyn stared at her, then laughed. It was a half-mad sound. You're just like him. Just like James. Absolutely reckless and completely right. They crossed the meadow at a sprint, made it to the lake. The water was dark, cold. Mac could feel ice crystals on the surface. It would be freezing. Where exactly? Mac asked. Evelyn pointed. Northeast corner, near that dead tree. Mac stripped off her gear, kept only her knife and a small waterproof flashlight. Waded in. The cold hit like a fist. Drove the air from her lungs. Mountain lake in October at 9,000 feet, probably 38 degrees. She took 3 deep breaths, hyperventilating, flooding her blood with oxygen, an old combat diver trick. Then she dove. The darkness was absolute. No light penetrated more than a few feet. Mac clicked on her flashlight. The beam cut through murky water, showed her stones and silt. She kicked deeper. Her ears popped. Pressure built in her chest. 18 feet, should be close. There, a metal box, military-grade waterproof case, chain wrapped around it, secured to an old engine block. Mac's lungs started burning. She'd been under maybe 45 seconds, could hold her breath for 3 minutes in calm conditions. Under stress, in freezing water, maybe half that. She worked the chain. It was corroded but still strong. She sawed at it with her knife. The blade bit into rust, weakened links. 1 minute underwater. The chain parted. Mac grabbed the case, heavy, maybe 40 pounds. She kicked toward the surface. Her lungs screamed. Vision started to tunnel. She kicked harder, broke the surface, gasping. Evelyn was there, helped pull her to shore. Mac dragged the case onto the bank, collapsed, shaking. Her body temperature was dropping fast. Mac! Evelyn was pulling off her own jacket, wrapping it around Mac's shoulders. You need to get warm. Hypothermia will kill you faster than Aldridge. Mac's teeth chattered, but she forced herself to move, to check the case. It had a combination lock. She spun the dial with numb fingers. 3179. Her birthday. The lock clicked open. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, was the arming mechanism. Circuit boards, wiring, a mechanical timer, everything needed to make a SADM functional. Mac closed the case. 1 component secured, 2 to go. But they were out of time. Flashlight beams swept across the meadow, voices calling. The hunting party had found their trail. Mac forced herself to her feet, grabbed the case. Her wet clothes were already starting to freeze. She couldn't feel her fingers, but adrenaline was overriding the cold. Run, she told Evelyn. South. There's a rally point 2 miles from here. My backup is almost there. What about you? I'll slow them down, give you a head start. Mac, you can't. Go! Evelyn ran. Mac watched her disappear into the trees, then turned to face the approaching lights. She had the M4 carbine, 3 magazines, about 90 rounds, against at least 6 operators. The smart play was to run, link up with Evelyn, wait for Sienna. But Mac was cold, tired, and absolutely done with running. She found a position behind a fallen log. Decent cover, good sight lines to the meadow, chambered around in the M4. When the first security team member stepped into the meadow, Mac opened fire. 3-round burst, center mass. The man went down. The others scattered. Returned fire. Muzzle flashes in the darkness. Bullets chewing up the log. Wood splinters flying. Mac rolled left, came up firing, dropped another man with a leg shot. They were using covering fire now, bounding toward her position. Professional, coordinated. Mac emptied her magazine, dropped it, slammed in a fresh one, fired again, keeping their heads down, buying time. Her phone buzzed. Sienna. We're at the rally point. Where are you? Grid coordinates. Mac rattled off numbers while firing. I'm pinned down. Hostage is heading your way. Older woman. white hair. Her name is Evelyn. Get her to safety. What about you? I'll be along. Just make sure she makes it. Mac ended the call, fired her last rounds, saw one more man go down. Then her rifle clicked empty, magazine dry. She drew her Sig Sauer, started backing toward the tree line, moving and shooting, keeping them busy. A bullet caught her left shoulder. Not a direct hit, grazing wound, but it spun her around. She went down hard, got back up, kept moving, blood running down her arm. Everything hurt. Cold, pain, exhaustion. Made it to the trees, turned and ran. Behind her, someone was shouting, "She's wounded! Run her down!" Mac ran through darkness, branches whipping her face, roots trying to trip her, the case with the arming mechanism banging against her side. She could hear them behind her, gaining. They were fresh. She was hypothermic and bleeding. This wasn't going to work. Mac found a ravine, rolled into it, crawled under an overhang, pulled pine branches over herself, went absolutely still. Footsteps pounded past. 3 men, maybe 4. They didn't see her. Kept running. Mac waited. 5 minutes, 10, until she was sure they were gone. Then she crawled out, started moving south again. Slower now. Careful, using every bit of fieldcraft she'd learned. It took her 40 minutes to cover 2 miles. By the time she reached the rally point, she could barely stand. Her left arm was numb, blood loss and hypothermia making her dizzy. But she made it. Sienna was there, ran to her. "Jesus, Mac, you look like hell." "I've had worse days." Behind Sienna were 2 more figures, Reeves and Jackson Cole, both former SEALs, both carrying enough weapons to start a small war. And Evelyn, wrapped in a blanket, bruised but alive. Mac handed the case to Sienna. "Arming mechanism. Keep it safe." Then her legs gave out and everything went black. Mac woke to the smell of coffee and gunpowder. Her shoulder throbbed with a deep, grinding ache that told her the wound was worse than she'd thought. Someone had bandaged it properly, medical tape and gauze instead of the field dressing she'd slapped on while running. She was in the back of a Suburban. Dawn light filtered through tinted windows. Outside, she could hear low voices, the distinctive sounds of weapons being checked, magazines loaded, the small metallic clicks that said people were preparing for war. Mac sat up. Her head spun. She forced the nausea down through sheer will. Sienna appeared at the open tailgate. She looked exactly like Mac remembered from Mosul. Tall, lean, dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Eyes that had seen too much death to be surprised by anything anymore. "You've been out for 3 hours," Sienna said. "Lost about a pint of blood. Shoulder wound went deeper than it looked. I stitched it. You'll live." "Evelyn?" "She's fine. Reeves is keeping watch on her, drinking coffee and telling us stories about your grandfather that I'm not sure I believe." Max slid out of the vehicle. Her legs held. Barely. She was wearing dry clothes. Someone had changed her while she was unconscious. Combat fatigues, not hers. Probably Sienna's spare gear. The rally point was a small clearing 2 miles south of her property. 3 vehicles. Sienna's Suburban, Reeves's pickup truck, Cole's Jeep. Enough firepower in the back of those vehicles to outfit a platoon. Reeves saw her and nodded. He was a big man, Samoan heritage, had carried Mac 3 miles through Kandahar after she'd taken shrapnel to both legs. She owed him her life twice over. Jackson Cole was smaller, wiry, former SEAL sniper like Mac. They'd done some joint operations in Syria. Good man, steady hands, clear head. "Good to see you vertical," Cole said. "Sienna said you were doing your best impression of a popsicle when you arrived." Mac managed a smile. "Still warmer than Alaska training." Evelyn sat on the tailgate of Reeves's truck. The bruises on her face had darkened to purple and yellow, but her eyes were sharp, alert. She was studying a topographic map spread across her lap. "Mackenzie," Evelyn looked up, "your friends have been filling me in. This is quite a rescue party you've assembled." More like the only people I trust. Mac walked over, looked at the map. It showed her property, the cabin, Three Sisters Peak, the silver mine, Lake Colossus. What are you plotting? Victory, I hope. Evelyn pointed to markers she'd drawn on the map. Your friends tell me Aldridge has at least 12 operators on the mountain now, maybe 15. They've secured your cabin as a command post. They're searching in a grid pattern, systematic, professional. They'll find the other two component locations eventually, Max said. The mine and Three Sisters are marked on my grandfather's map. If they captured that from my cabin, they did. Sienna held up her phone. Cole did a recon pass an hour ago. Thermal imaging shows heavy activity at the cabin. They've got your grandfather's journal and map. It's only a matter of time before they decode the cipher and find the other components. Mac felt cold certainty settle into her bones. Then we need to get there first. You're wounded, Sienna said. Hypothermic. You've been running and fighting for 12 hours. You need rest. I'll rest when this is over. How long until they crack the cipher? Evelyn shook her head. The cipher is simple if you know the key. Your birthday. Aldridge doesn't know that. It could take him days of trial and error. Or he could get lucky in the next hour. We can't risk it. Max studied the map. Three Sisters Peak is 4 miles from the cabin. Technical climb. They'll need daylight and climbing gear. That buys us maybe 6 hours. The silver mine is closer, Cole said. 2 miles west. Easier terrain. If I was running this op, I'd hit the mine first. Agreed. Mac traced the route with her finger. So we split up. Cole, you take Evelyn to Three Sisters. Get the plutonium core. Reeves, you're with them. Security. And you? Sienna asked. The mine. I'll get the detonator. The hell you will. You can barely stand. I can stand well enough to shoot, and I'm the only one besides Evelyn who knows what we're looking for. We don't have time to argue about this. Sienna held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Fine, but I'm going with you. Cole and Reeves can handle the peak. Cole grinned. Been a while since I climbed anything higher than a bar stool. Should be fun. They spent 20 minutes planning. Routes, rally points, communications protocol. What to do if one team was compromised. It was abbreviated compared to SEAL mission planning, but they didn't have time for perfect. They had time for good enough. Mac loaded her weapons. The M4 with 4 fresh magazines, her Sig Sauer with 3, her grandfather's Remington with the remaining rounds, and the thermite grenade, just in case everything went to hell and she needed to destroy evidence. The arming mechanism stayed with Cole. If anything happened to Mac and Sienna, at least Aldridge wouldn't have all 3 components. One more thing, Evelyn said. She pulled something from her pocket. A small USB drive. This is everything I've collected in 40 years. Bank records, communications, proof of Aldridge's treason, proof he's been selling classified intel to foreign powers since 1984. If I don't make it off this mountain, someone needs to get this to the right people. Mac took the drive, slipped it into a waterproof pouch on her vest. You're going to make it. Maybe, but insurance is never a bad idea. They synchronized watches. Cole's team would head for Three Sisters immediately. Mac and Sienna would wait 30 minutes, then move on the mine. Staggered timing meant Aldridge's people couldn't intercept both teams simultaneously. Cole, Reeves, and Evelyn loaded into the Jeep. Cole gave Mac a casual salute. Try not to die. I'm still waiting for you to buy me that beer you owe me from Syria. Keep waiting. Maybe in another 5 years. The Jeep pulled out, disappeared into the pre-dawn darkness. Mac and Sienna were alone. You sure about this? Sienna asked. We could call the FBI, the agency, someone. Evelyn spent 40 years trying that. Aldridge has connections, friends. Every time she got close, he shut her down. The only way this ends is if we end it, ourselves. Sienna checked her watch. 30 minutes. Tell me about the mine. Mac described it from memory. An 1880s silver mine, abandoned after a collapse killed 6 miners. Single entrance, Tunnel ran about 200 feet into the mountainside before hitting a cave-in. Side passages, some shored up with old timber, some just raw rock. Her grandfather had hidden the detonator somewhere in those tunnels, deep enough that metal detectors from the surface wouldn't pick it up, secure enough that 40 years of weather and wildlife hadn't disturbed it. Tight spaces, Sienna said, limited sight lines, perfect place for an ambush. Which is why we go in quiet, fast, get what we need, and get out. The 30 minutes crawled past. Mac used the time to run through her mental checklist. Weapons, ammunition, medical supplies, escape routes, everything a SEAL learned to consider before stepping into a potential kill box. Her phone buzzed. Cole. We're at the base of Three Sisters, starting the climb. No sign of hostiles. You're clear to move. Mac and Sienna loaded into the Suburban. Sienna drove, no headlights, using night vision goggles to navigate the rough terrain. They took a circuitous route, avoiding the main trails, using creek beds and game paths. 20 minutes later, they were a quarter-mile from the mine entrance. Mac's laptop showed heat signatures. 4 people, clustered near the mine. Aldridge had beaten them there. "We've got company," Mac said. Sienna killed the engine. They sat in silence for a moment. Then she turned to Mac. "Last chance to call this off." Not a chance. They exited the vehicle, moved on foot. The mine was set into a hillside, stone and timber frame around the entrance. Looked like it might collapse if you breathed on it wrong. But Mac's grandfather's journal said the first 50 feet were stable. Beyond that, you took your chances. The 4 heat signatures were outside, setting up equipment, lights, what looked like a portable generator. Mac and Sienna found an elevated position, 100 yards out, good cover behind a rock formation. Through her scope, Mac could identify 3 of the 4 men, Aldridge's security team. The 4th was Garrett Webb, the man who'd confronted her that first night when this all started. Webb was giving orders, pointing into the mine. 2 men grabbed equipment and headed inside. Webb and 1 guard stayed outside. 2 in, 2 out, Mac whispered. "We take the outside team. Quiet." Sienna nodded. She was carrying a suppressed MK-18 carbine, subsonic ammunition. At 100 yards, the shots would sound like someone snapping their fingers. They moved closer, got within 70 yards. Mac took up a shooting position. Sienna did the same, 10 feet to her left. Mac's crosshairs settled on the guard. Young guy, maybe 28, probably former military, didn't deserve to die for Aldridge's greed. But he was between Mac and what she needed, and this was war. She shifted aim, took him in the leg. Not a killing shot, just incapacitating. Sienna fired a half-second later. Her round took Webb in the shoulder. Both men went down. The guards screaming, Webb cursing, trying to get to his radio. Mac and Sienna were moving before the brass hit the ground, sprinting, weapons up. They covered 70 yards in under 10 seconds. The guard was on the ground, clutching his leg, his rifle 3 feet away. Mac kicked it further, zip-tied his hands, field-dressed his wound. He'd live if his buddies got him to a hospital. Webb was trying to crawl toward the mine entrance. Sienna put a boot on his back, pressed him flat. "Where's the detonator?" Mac asked. Webb spit blood. "Go to hell." Mac knelt, put the muzzle of her cig against his good shoulder. "I've had a really bad night. I'm cold, I'm tired, I'm bleeding, and I'm all out of patience. Tell me where it is or I start putting holes in you until you do." "You won't. You're SEAL. Rules of engagement. Laws of war." "I'm not SEAL anymore. Your boss made sure of that. And we're not in a war zone. We're on my property, which makes this self-defense." She pressed the gun harder. Webb's eyes widened. He was reading her expression, seeing the truth there. She would absolutely shoot him. 100 feet in, side passage on the left. There's a metal box wedged into a crack in the rock. "Booby-trapped?" "No, we just found it 5 minutes ago. Didn't have time to secure it." Max stood, looked at Sienna. Watch them. Anyone comes out of that mine who isn't me, shoot them. Mac, you shouldn't go in alone. Someone needs to guard our exit. That's you. Mac didn't wait for an argument. She grabbed a flashlight from Webb's gear, checked her M4, moved to the mine entrance. The tunnel was dark, cold. The air smelled of stone and old timbers, and something else, something organic and wrong, like the mountain itself was rotting from the inside. Mac clicked on the flashlight. The beam cut through absolute darkness, showed her rough-hewn walls, support timbers that looked older than the country, rails on the ground where mine cars had once run. She moved forward, weapon up, every sense on high alert. 50 feet, 75. The tunnel narrowed. Her shoulders almost touched both walls. At 100 feet, she found the side passage. Barely 5 feet high, she had to duck to enter. The passage ran 15 feet, ended in a small chamber, and there, wedged into a crack in the rock, was a metal box identical to the one she'd pulled from the lake. Mac approached carefully, checked for tripwires, pressure plates, any sign of a trap, found nothing. She pulled the box free, heavy, maybe 30 pounds, the same combination lock. 3179. The lock opened. Inside, wrapped in the same oiled cloth, was the detonator assembly. Circuit boards, timing mechanism, blasting caps. 2 components secured, 1 to go. Mac closed the box, started back toward the entrance. She was 20 feet from the main tunnel when she heard it. Voices, multiple people, coming from the mine entrance. Mac killed her light, went absolutely still in the darkness. The voices got closer. Bootsteps echoing, lights dancing on the tunnel walls. Webb said he had it, should be right here. Male voice, unfamiliar. Forget Webb, he's wounded. Find the box and let's get out of here. This place gives me the creeps. They were coming down the main tunnel, heading toward Mac's position. She had maybe 30 seconds before they reached the side passage. No time to hide, no room to maneuver in the tight confines. Mac made a decision. She pulled the thermite grenade from her vest, pulled the pin, tossed it down the side passage behind her. Then she ran. Thermite burned at 4,000 degrees, hot enough to melt through steel. When it ignited, it would collapse the side passage, bury the detonator under tons of rock. Better destroyed than in Aldridge's hands. Mac burst out of the side passage into the main tunnel. 2 men were there, 20 feet away, lights in her face, weapons coming up. She fired first. 3-round burst from the M4, center mass on the closest target. He went down. The second man dove for cover, returned fire, muzzle flash blinding in the confined space, bullets ricocheting off stone walls. Mac felt something punch her vest. Ballistic plate caught it, would leave a hell of a bruise. She fired again, suppressing fire, backing toward the entrance. Behind her, the thermite grenade detonated. White-hot chemical fire. The side passage lit up like a miniature sun. Heat rolled down the main tunnel, smoke and dust and the grinding sound of rock giving way. The entire mine shuddered. Mac ran. Full sprint. The tunnel was collapsing behind her, support timbers cracking, ceiling coming down. She saw daylight ahead, Sienna silhouetted in the entrance. Reaching, shouting. Mac dove, hit the ground outside the mine entrance, rolled. Sienna grabbed her vest and dragged her clear. The mine entrance collapsed, tons of rock and timber crashing down, dust billowing out in a choking cloud. When it cleared, the entrance was completely blocked, sealed, and 2 of Aldridge's men were buried inside. Mac lay on the ground, coughing, her ears ringing from the blast and gunfire in enclosed space. Sienna was yelling something. Mac couldn't hear over the ringing. Then her hearing started to come back. "Hey, something! Are you hit?" "I'm fine. Vest caught it." "Jesus Christ, Mac. You collapsed a mine with people inside." "They were shooting at me." Webb was staring at the collapsed entrance. His face had gone pale. "You killed them. You buried them alive." They made their choice when they came to my mountain. Max sat up. Her whole body hurt. And I destroyed the detonator. Aldridge doesn't get it. Webb laughed. It was a broken sound. You think that matters? He's got the core from Three Sisters. His other team secured it an hour ago. Max's blood went cold. What? He's got the plutonium core, the most important component. With that, he can still make a sale. Maybe not full price, but enough. And your friends with the climbing gear? They walked right into an ambush. Mac grabbed Webb by his tactical vest, hauled him close despite her injured shoulder. Where? Where did he take them? Your cabin. That's where he's consolidating everything, where he's waiting for the buyer. They're supposed to arrive at noon. Mac checked her watch. 9:37. 2.5 hours. She pulled out her phone, called Cole. It went straight to voicemail. Called Reeves. Same. Sienna, we need to move, now. They zip-tied Webb to a tree, left the wounded guard with a radio and told him to call for medical evac. Then they were running back to the Suburban. Mac tried Cole's phone again while Sienna drove. Still nothing. They could just be out of cell range, Sienna said. Three Sisters is high. Spotty coverage. Or they're dead. Don't think like that. But Mac was thinking like that. Because that's what operators did. They planned for worst-case scenarios. If Cole's team was compromised, Aldridge had the core and the arming mechanism. 2 out of 3 components. Enough to make a partial sale. Enough to still win. Unless Max stopped him. The Suburban bounced over rough terrain. Sienna was pushing it hard. Too hard for the conditions. But they didn't have time for careful. Mac loaded fresh magazines. Checked her weapons. Her shoulder was bleeding again. She could feel warmth spreading down her arm. Ignored it. Pain was just information. They were 3 miles from the cabin when Mac's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Mackenzie, Aldridge's voice. Calm. Almost friendly. I believe we need to talk. Where are my people? Your friends are alive, for now. I have Cole, Reeves, and Dr. Thorne at your cabin. Unharmed. I'm prepared to trade them for the detonator assembly. I don't have it. I destroyed it in the mine collapse. Silence on the line. Then Aldridge laughed. You're lying. You wouldn't destroy it. That's your only leverage. I collapsed the mine to keep you from getting it. Your men are buried in there. You want to dig them out and check? Be my guest. More silence. Mac could almost hear him recalculating, adjusting his strategy. Then we have a problem, Aldridge said finally. I have 2 components. You have 1. Neither of us can complete a sale. Neither of us wins. I'm not trying to win. I'm trying to stop you. Noble, futile, but noble. Here's my final offer. Bring me the arming mechanism. I'll release your friends. We'll call this even. Why would I believe you? Because you don't have a choice. I have 3 hostages. You have 1 component. Do the math. You trade, or I start executing them. 1 every 30 minutes until you comply. Mac's jaw tightened. If you hurt them, then what? You'll kill me? You can try, but I have 15 operators at this location. You and your partner won't get within 200 yards of this cabin. Be smart, Mackenzie. Take the deal. Save your friends. Walk away. I want proof of life. Put Cole on. A pause, then Cole's voice. Mac, don't do it. Don't trust him. He's going to kill us anyway. Mac heard the sound of someone being hit. Cole grunting. Then Aldridge again. Proof of life provided. You have 1 hour. Come alone. Unarmed. We'll make the exchange and this all ends quietly. The line went dead. Sienna looked at Mac. He's lying. He'll kill all of you. I know. So what's the play? Mac stared out at the mountains. The sun was climbing higher. Beautiful morning. Clear sky. The kind of day that made you glad to be alive. The play is we don't give him what he wants. We take it all back. 2 of us against 15. Those are suicide odds. Then I guess we better be smarter than them. Mac pulled up the laptop, checked her property cameras. Most were offline. Aldridge's people had found and disabled them, but 3 were still functional, hidden better than the others. The feeds showed her cabin. Aldridge had turned it into a forward operating base. Guards posted, weapons cached. The hostages were inside. Mac could see them through a window. Cole and Reeves zip-tied to chairs. Evelyn between them. Aldridge himself was visible, standing on the porch, phone to his ear, probably arranging his buyer's arrival. 15 operators, Max said, but they're consolidated in one location. Defensive posture. They're expecting me to come to them. Which you can't do without getting killed. Right. So we don't go to them. We make them come to us. Mac pulled up the topographic map on her phone, studied the terrain around her cabin. There was a ravine 300 yards north, good cover, high ground, sight lines to the cabin. What are you thinking? Sienna asked. I'm thinking about what my grandfather taught me. You don't fight on the enemy's terms. You make them fight on yours. Mac outlined the plan. It was risky, probably suicidal, but it was the only option that had even a chance of working. Sienna listened, nodded slowly. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Will it work? Maybe, if we're lucky, if they're stupid, if about 15 things go exactly right. So you're in? Sienna grinned. It was a fierce expression. The kind of smile you saw on people who'd accepted they might die, but refused to go quietly. Hell yes, I'm in. SEALs don't leave people behind. They drove to a position half a mile from the cabin, parked the Suburban in a concealed location, unloaded their gear. Mac had 4 magazines for the M4, 2 for the SIG, 8 rounds for the Remington, 1 smoke grenade, and the arming mechanism in its metal case. Not much to fight a small war with, but it would have to be enough. Sienna had similar loadout, plus a radio jammer, short range, enough to disrupt communications within a quarter-mile radius. When you activate that, Mac said, they'll know something's wrong. They'll go on high alert. Which is why we activate it at exactly the right moment, not before. They moved through the forest, slow, careful, using every bit of cover. It took 40 minutes to reach the ravine Mac had identified. The position was perfect, elevated, 310 yards from the cabin, sheltered by rocks and trees, multiple routes of egress if things went sideways. Mac set up behind a boulder, prone position, Remington 700 on its bipod, scope zeroed for 300 yards. Through the magnification, she could see everything. Aldridge on the porch, guards posted at the corners of the cabin, more guards patrolling the perimeter, her friends inside, still alive. Sienna settled in next to her. 15 minutes until his deadline. What's the play? We wait. Let him sweat. When he realizes I'm not coming, he'll make a move. Probably threaten one of the hostages, try to force my hand. And then we show him what happens when you underestimate a SEAL. The minutes crawled past. Mac's breathing was calm, heart rate steady. This was what she'd trained for, what she'd lived for. The moment when everything came down to skill and will. At exactly 11 o'clock, Aldridge's patience ran out. He stepped off the porch, gestured to 2 guards. They went inside, came back out dragging Cole. Even from 300 yards, Mac could see Cole fighting, trying to resist, but he was zip-tied, outnumbered. They forced him to his knees in the open ground in front of the cabin. Aldridge pulled a pistol, pressed it to Cole's head. Then he looked directly at the tree line, scanning, searching for Mac even though he couldn't see her. Mackenzie Brenner, his voice carried across the distance, amplified by a portable loudspeaker. I know you're out there. I know you're watching. You have 60 seconds to show yourself or your friend dies. Cole yelled something. Mac couldn't hear it, but she could read his lips. 3 words. Don't do it. Mac's crosshairs settled on Aldridge's head, center of the reticle, perfect sight picture. 310 yards. Wind was calm. Temperature 62 degrees. Altitude 9,000 feet. Bullet drop would be approximately 8 inches at this range. She could make the shot, 90% certainty, maybe 95, but the guards would execute Cole immediately, and then Reeves, and then Evelyn. 45 seconds, Aldridge called. Mac's finger rested on the trigger, not pulling, just feeling the resistance. The trigger brake would come at 3.5 pounds of pressure. 30 seconds, Sienna whispered. Mac, if you're going to do something, do it now. Mac made her decision. She pulled back from the rifle, grabbed the metal case with the arming mechanism, stood up. Wait, she shouted. I'm here. Don't shoot. Every gun turned toward her position. 15 weapons, all pointed at her. Mac raised her hands, the case dangling from one. I have what you want. Let them go and I'll bring it down. Aldridge lowered his pistol, smiled. Even from 300 yards, Mac could see his satisfaction. Finally, some sense. Come down slowly. Hands where I can see them. Mac started walking. Down the ravine, across the open ground, toward the cabin. Sienna hissed behind her. What are you doing? Mac didn't answer, just kept walking. Hands raised, case visible. She covered 50 yards, 100. The guards were tense, fingers on triggers, ready to cut her down at the first wrong move. At 200 yards, Mac stopped, set the case on the ground, stepped back. There, she called. The arming mechanism. Send my people out, and it's yours. Aldridge laughed. You must think I'm stupid. I'm not releasing anyone until I verify that case contains what you claim. Then come verify it yourself. Not a chance. Webb, Aldridge gestured to one of the guards. Check the case. A different guard stepped forward, not Webb, someone Mac didn't recognize. He approached the case warily, kept his rifle pointed at Mac. Open it, Aldridge ordered. The guard knelt, worked the combination lock. It clicked open. He lifted the lid. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the case exploded. Not thermite this time, just smoke. Thick, choking, gray smoke that billowed out in a massive cloud. Mac had rigged it while in the Suburban. Smoke grenade attached to a simple mechanical trigger. Open the case, pull the pin. The smoke enveloped the guard, spread across the clearing. Visibility dropped to 0, and Mac was moving. She dropped the case at exactly 200 yards, counted her steps, knew exactly where the cabin was, even blind. She ran through the smoke, drew her Sig Sauer, fired 3 shots in the air, making noise, creating chaos. The guards opened fire, but they were shooting blind, bullets snapping through the smoke, hitting nothing but air and trees. Mac hit the ground, belly crawled toward the cabin. The smoke was starting to clear. She had maybe 10 more seconds. She reached the cabin wall, pressed flat against it. Guards were shouting, trying to regroup. Aldridge was yelling orders, and from the ravine, Sienna opened fire. The first shot took a guard in the leg. The second caught another in the shoulder. Precision fire from 300 yards. Sienna was making every round count. The guards scattered, some running for cover, some returning fire toward the ravine, all of them forgetting about Mac. She moved along the cabin wall, reached a window, the one where she'd seen the hostages. Cole was still inside, still zip-tied, but he'd gotten to his feet, was watching the chaos outside. Mac tapped on the glass. Cole's head snapped around. His eyes went wide. Mac pointed to the door, mouthed 2 words, "Get ready." Then she moved to the cabin's front door. It was barred from the inside, heavy timber across the frame. Mac pulled out the thermite grenade, the real one, her last piece of serious hardware. She pulled the pin, placed it against the door's hinges, stepped back. Thermite burned at 4,000 degrees. The hinges melted in less than 5 seconds. Mac kicked the door. It fell inward. She went in fast, Sig Sauer up, scanning for targets. One guard inside. He was turning, raising his rifle. Mac shot him twice, center mass. He went down. Cole was against the far wall, Reeves next to him, Evelyn between them. All three had their hands tied behind their backs. Mac ran to them, cut Cole's zip ties with her knife, handed him the Sig Sauer. Get them out, back door, head for Sienna's position. Cole took the pistol, started cutting Reeves loose. What about you? I'm ending this. Mac didn't wait for a response. She grabbed the fallen guard's rifle, M4 variant, full magazine. She moved back to the doorway. Outside, the smoke had cleared. Aldridge's guards were regrouping, realizing the hostages were escaping, starting to move toward the cabin. Mac stepped into the doorway, raised the rifle, started firing. 3-round bursts, controlled, precise. She dropped 2 guards before they even saw her. A third took a round to the leg. The rest dove for cover, started returning fire. Bullets tore through the cabin walls, wood splinters flying. Mac dropped back inside, moved to a window, fired from a different angle. This wasn't about killing everyone. It was about buying time, keeping them pinned, letting Cole get the others to safety. Her radio crackled. Cole's voice. We're clear, heading to the rally point. Copy, get out of here. Mac fired again, dropped her magazine, reloaded. She was down to 2 mags now, maybe 60 rounds. Outside, Aldridge was screaming orders. Suppressing fire! Burn that cabin down if you have to. I want her dead. The volume of incoming fire tripled. Every remaining guard opening up on the cabin. Bullets shredding the walls. Windows exploding. Mac hit the floor, covered her head. This was it. The moment she'd been fighting toward. Outnumbered, outgunned, no way out. Just like Afghanistan. Just like every other impossible situation she'd survived through sheer stubbornness and refusal to quit. Mac grabbed the M4, moved to the back door, the one Cole had used to escape. She could try to run, follow them, maybe make it, or she could finish this. She thought about her grandfather, about James Brenner spending 19 years running, always looking over his shoulder, never free, never safe. That wasn't going to be Mac's life. She made her choice. Mac went out the front door, firing, full automatic, burning through her magazine, putting rounds down range like rain. She saw Aldridge, 50 yards away, behind a vehicle, shock on his face that she'd actually charged. Mac ran toward him, straight into the fire, bullets whipping past. One caught her vest again, another grazed her thigh. Didn't matter. She kept moving, dropped the empty M4, drew Cole's Sig Sauer from her belt, the one he'd handed back in the confusion. 30 yards from Aldridge, a guard stepped out from cover. Mac shot him, kept running. 20 yards, another guard. Mac's round took him in the chest. 10 yards. Aldridge was raising his own pistol, face twisted with rage and fear. Mac and Aldridge fired simultaneously. She felt his bullet punch into her left side, below the vest, felt the shock, the pain, the knowledge that she was hit bad. But her round hit first, caught Aldridge in the right shoulder, spun him around. His pistol flew from his hand. Mac hit the ground. The impact drove the air from her lungs. She tried to get up, couldn't. Her left side was on fire, blood spreading fast. She'd been shot before, knew what it meant, knew she had maybe minutes before shock and blood loss shut her down. But she wasn't done yet. Mac crawled, dragged herself toward Aldridge. He was on the ground too, clutching his shoulder, trying to reach his fallen pistol. Mac got there first, kicked the weapon away, pointed the Sig at his head. It's over, she said. Her voice sounded wrong, weak. You lost. Aldridge laughed, blood on his teeth. Did I? You're dying. Your friends are running. I still have operators in the field. Even if you kill me, someone will find those components. Someone will complete the sale. Wrong. Mac pulled out the USB drive Evelyn had given her, held it up. 40 years of evidence, every transaction, every betrayal, every life you destroyed. It's all here. And it's going to the FBI, CIA, every agency that matters. You're done. Understanding dawned in Aldridge's eyes. Then fear. Real fear. The kind you see in people who realize they've lost everything. "You can't," he whispered. "I'm a two-star general. I have connections, friends. They'll bury this." "Maybe, but they'll know the truth. Everyone will know. That's all my grandfather wanted, the truth." Before Mac could say more, a shot rang out. But it wasn't from Mac's gun. Aldridge jerked. A red flower bloomed on his chest. Center mass. Perfect shot. Mac looked up. Sienna stood 50 yards away, rifle still raised, smoke curling from the barrel. "Told you," Sienna called out. "SEALs don't leave people behind." Aldridge coughed blood, stared at the sky. 40 years, he whispered. 40 years and I lost to a girl. "Not a girl," Mac said. "A SEAL." Aldridge's eyes went empty. Still. Dead. Mac collapsed back onto the ground. Heard vehicles approaching. Multiple engines. Sienna running toward her. "Federal agents, drop your weapons." Mac's vision was getting blurry. She looked up, saw Sienna's face. Saw Cole limping from the tree line, blood on his shoulder but alive. Saw FBI agents swarming the area. Saw people in FBI windbreakers, lots of them. Evelyn had called them. Must have had a contact, someone she trusted, someone who'd been waiting for proof. Mac lowered the cig, let it slip from her fingers. Sienna reached her, pressed hands to the wound in Mac's side. "Stay with me. Medevac is inbound. You're going to be fine." "Did we get them all?" "Yeah, we got them. You got them." Mac smiled. "Good. That's good." Her vision was going dark. She could hear Sienna yelling for a medic, could feel hands on her, pressure on the wound. The last thing she saw before everything went black was the remaining guards being dragged away in handcuffs. Defeated. Destroyed. Just like they deserved. Mac let the darkness take her. She'd earned the rest. 3 months later, Mac stood in a federal courtroom in Denver. Her left side still ached where the bullet had torn through. Probably always would. Physical therapy said she'd regain 80% function. Better than nothing. The courtroom was packed. Media, federal agents, families of the people Aldridge and his network had killed over 40 years of treason. The judge was reading the verdict. The defendants sat at multiple tables. Aldridge was dead, but his network remained. 7 co-conspirators, all former military or intelligence, all complicit in decades of weapons trafficking. On the charge of treason, we find the defendants guilty. On the charges of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. On the charges of weapons trafficking, guilty. The list went on. Hundreds of counts total. Each one another nail in the coffins of Aldridge's organization. You are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. You will be remanded to the United States Penitentiary, Florence AdMax, where you will remain for the rest of your natural lives. The gavel came down. Mac felt no satisfaction, no victory, just a cold certainty that justice, however slow, had finally arrived. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Mac ignored them, pushed through to where Sienna was waiting with a truck. "You okay?" Sienna asked. Getting there, they drove north, 3 hours through Colorado mountains, back to Mac's land. The cabin was gone, burned down during the firefight, but Mac had plans. New cabin, better design, solar panels, modern amenities. But first, something else. She drove to Ghost Rock, the place where her grandfather had hidden his first clue, where Mac had started putting the pieces together. Cole and Reeves were already there. They'd installed a memorial stone, black granite, simple, elegant. The inscription read, Colonel James Brenner, 1950 to 2003, CIA officer, Operation Ghost Winter. Some secrets are worth dying for. Below that, a second inscription, in memory of all who crossed this fence and never came back. 9 gave their lives for greed. 3 gave theirs for justice. The mountain remembers. Mac ran her fingers over the stone, thought about her grandfather, about the choice he'd made 40 years ago, the price he'd paid. The Pentagon called, Cole said. They want to restore your SEAL status. Full reinstatement, back pay, the works. What did you tell them? That they should call you directly, but I'm guessing you'll say no. Mac nodded. I'm done taking orders from people who only care about covering their own asses. So what will you do? Mac looked out at her land, 2,000 acres of Colorado mountains. Beautiful, peaceful, home. I'm going to build something, a place for people like us, veterans who got screwed by the system, women who were told they weren't good enough, people who need somewhere to heal. That'll take money, Reeves said. The government paid me $8 million in compensation for the wrongful discharge, for getting shot on federal land, for emotional distress, more than enough to get started. Evelyn walked up. She'd been at the trial, had testified about everything, every betrayal, every crime. 40 years of evidence finally used. Your grandfather would be proud, she said. You did what he couldn't. You exposed the truth. You brought them all down. We did it, Mac corrected. You, me, Cole, Reeves, Sienna, all of us. Still, James would be proud. They stood at the memorial for a long time, watching the sunset behind Three Sisters Peak, watching the aspens turn gold in the fading light. Mac thought about the men who'd crossed her fence, the poachers who'd come for weapons, for money, for power. 9 had died on this mountain, buried in a collapsed mine, shot in firefights, killed by their own greed. They'd never come back. Their bodies remained on the mountain, part of it now. The earth had claimed them. And Mac, she'd survived, had won. But she carried scars, physical and mental, the kind that never fully healed. She thought about Cole's words, the moment Aldridge put a gun to his head. 3 words, don't do it. But she had done it, had charged into impossible odds, had nearly died. Would she do it again? Mac looked at her friends, at Evelyn, at the memorial to her grandfather. Yeah, she would. Some things were worth dying for. Honor, truth, justice, and making sure the people who thought they were above the law learned otherwise. Mac placed her grandfather's Remington 700 against the memorial stone, the rifle that had started all of this, the weapon he'd taught her to shoot with 20 years ago. I don't need this anymore, she said quietly. The war's over. Evelyn put a hand on her shoulder. No, the war's over, but the work is just beginning. Mac looked at her. The sanctuary? Your grandfather spent his life hiding from the truth. You spent yours revealing it. Now it's time to build something that matters, something that lasts. Mac nodded, looked out at the land, her mountain. 9 men had died here, but thousands would heal here. That was the legacy worth leaving. Mac turned away from the memorial, started walking back to the truck. Where to? Sienna asked. Town. I need to meet with architects, engineers, start designing the facility. What are you going to call it? Mac thought about it, about her grandfather, about the mountain, about everyone who'd fought and bled on this land. Brenner Mountain Veterans Sanctuary, she said, a place where people can come when the system fails them, where they can heal, where they can remember they're not alone. I like it, Cole said. When do we start? Today, right now. No more waiting, no more running. We build something that lasts. They drove down the mountain as the sun set. Behind them, Ghost Rock stood silent, the memorial stone catching the last rays of light. And somewhere in that stone, Mac imagined she could feel her grandfather's presence, his approval, his pride. She'd finished what he started. The mountain had claimed its due. The poachers who'd crossed her fence had never come back. Their story was over. But Mac's story? That was just beginning.